I think getting worse for sure. No, I think we already talked about helping out.
Take that again, sorry.
Sure. That'd be great. Skip. Ready whenever you are.
Yeah. Nobody had told us they're on the.
I don't, I haven't checked out. Yeah. I'm sure. It's not. Put it around the printout. So it should have been, okay, all right. This is, I don't know.
He's crazy.
Well, I mean, I can't accept that. Good afternoon. Let's call today's Board of Trustee meeting to order at 4 p.m. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Pelkowski,
Present.
Epic, McNamee, present, Nunley, here, Pismo,
Here.
Sheets,
Here.
Stanger, here, Swanson,
Here.
Zibble.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Abbott and Mr. Zibble are unable to join us this evening. If we could please stand for the pledge. I totally agree. Thank you. And Ms. Steiner volunteered to read the witness statement. Would you please read it?
Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents, with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you so much. Are there any public comments in the room today? Seeing none, our first item is the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees board meeting minutes of February 26, 2024?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Swanson. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Pismo,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. The minutes have been approved. I am now going to turn the meeting over to Ben for some employee recognition.
So I have a kind of a late addition to the agenda, that some of my team actually, I'll give them the credit for thinking of this. But, I reported last month that we had our employee recognition event, which was quite a big hit, with the group. And today is actually National Transit Employee Recognition Day, so we thought it would be great to bring the folks that won awards to the board meeting, just kind of recognize again, let the board see them and kind of, put a face to all those fantastic people that do the work on a daily basis. And so our first two award winners, one of them is driving a bus right now. I don't believe Frank from Geauga made it. So we had a number of different categories that were voted on by our employees. So these folks aren't just people that me and my team thought were great. These are people that the whole organization voted for. We had 123 nominees, so there was quite a few people nominated for these awards. So the first one, and when I say your name, I'm gonna make you stand up just because, I like to make it put you on the spot. But the first person who got the Mission Possible Award, and that's for somebody who overcomes obstacles, no matter how big or small. And this is again from his peers, so this is Robert from Dispatch. Robert from our dispatchers, and it's one of those jobs where I hear a lot of drivers say, you couldn't pay me enough to do that job. It could be a tough job, but Robert does a great job of it. Thank you very much. Next, we have our Helping Hands Award. This is for an employee who's always volunteering and out there in the community, wants to help people as much as possible. And this is Doug Hazen. Next is what we call the walk award, and this is for that person that just kind of quietly, consistently does their thing. Sometimes you don't even know they came in and out to work that day, but you feel their impact all day long, because they're just there, available to everybody all the time. So the first person is Chris Chris Rice, she's one of our schedulers, she couldn't be here today, but so. The other person is, Joe Jose Kuzma from Job Training. We also had a rookie of the year to kind of just celebrate that person who just started and is really doing a great job in their first year, and that is Marcia Parkinson. Next we have some other awards. These ones were from the leadership team, and this person got our 2023 Superior Customer Service Award. So this is someone who really just exhibited outstanding customer service through accommodations from customers and just their general attitude. And so they just, they exemplify what Laketran stands for, and just, that kind of customer forward attitude, which is Christine Wright. And our last person has actually been here before, and this person won 2 awards. They won our 2023 Superior Safety Award and our first ever Employee of the Year Award. And this person has been with Laketran for a long time, 36 years, 36, right on Laketran, the right number, for 36 years, and for every single one of those years, he's never had an accident. He's driven Route 1 for all 36 years, so we joke that he has a name for every pothole on our avenue. But, this is Lee Ramey, and he just is an amazing employee. So we just thought it'd be a good idea, the board doesn't always get a chance to see and interact with the drivers, so we asked them all to come today. This was voluntary. None of them were required to be here. We asked that they wanted to participate, wanted to show up, and pretty much every single one of them did show up. The ones that couldn't, the reason they're not here is they said, well, I have a bus to drive. So I just thought, and my team thought it'd be really great if the board would get a chance to see some of those outstanding employees we have in this community. So just, round of applause to them again.
I have all you guys sneak up behind Brian and Ben and get a picture with Brian and Ben.
I'll get started.
You and Brian can be the book then. You might have to have Marcia come.
Yeah.
I know, it's just such a hard
All
spot. to
versus.
You guys don't have a choice.
Now that you're here.
Hey, can you sneak in front between Doug and?
Here.
Doug and Doug? Between Joe and Ben. What's that in your way?
All right, 1, 2, 3. I think I got one.
Be beautiful when we get back into our new boardroom. All right. Thank you and congratulations.
You guys are welcome to stay, but also welcome to leave to refer to get back to your job. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like I'm gonna turn the meeting over to Ben to do a presentation on the sidewalk grant contest.
Sure, so, I'm gonna go through basically what our initial thoughts are on if we were to do a sidewalk program to the community. Keep in mind, this is all what we think might be a good idea, but there are no really specific rules about it, so we can change almost anything. So, we do our best to think of, based on our experience applying for grants and just our knowledge of how this process typically works, as us going through it, we do our best to think of how it might work well for us. So just a reminder, every Laketran passenger is pedestrian. So sidewalks improve access to transit, they also improve the pedestrian process. The general concept is that either annually or at some other sort of regular interval, the board could allocate as much or as little funding to this project as they desired. We think it might be a good idea to start with $1 million, could be less, could be more, you know, there's not necessarily a right answer. The concept that we kind of came up with is that we would create an application that would be, we'd publicize it out into the community with scoring criteria, and then the board would ultimately approve staff recommendations. So it's kind of a typical process for grants, is there's an application with criteria, they get scored and ranked, staff brings it to the board, and they say yes, no, whatever. The general criteria are that the sidewalks would need to be along bus routes and improve safety and the rider experience. Municipalities would be responsible for design, right-of-way, easements, and maintenance, so we would be the funder, but not the long-term maintainer or the doer of the actual project. Local municipalities could apply to Laketran for 100% of the funding, including design. That's important because a lot of times in a municipal project, design is not one of the things a place can apply for. So if I'm the city of Mentor and I'm applying to NOACA for money to build a sidewalk, well, most of the time, design is not an eligible criteria. The city has to do the design on their own without any funding. For some places that can be a challenge. And then eventually, Laketran would reimburse the communities. We thought it was really important that we would not be giving them money up front, is that they would have to complete the project, demonstrate that it was correct. If for some reason they added something that we didn't permit, we wouldn't necessarily pay for that, we would only pay for the specific scope they had applied for. We feel pretty strongly that at least for the first go around, it would need to be a municipality in Lake County, so city, township, village, some form of government agency. Main reason for that is, even though there are not a lot of rules to go with this, it is taxpayer money, it is still governed by the Ohio Revised Code procurement process. So whoever is doing the project has to be familiar with how to procure things using taxpayer dollars. And so all cities already know how to do that because they're day-to-day business, so that's why in our initial round, we suggest it has to be a municipality. There could be some ways, if this was successful and kept going in the future, it could be a nonprofit or some other organization. I'll put a lot of the onus back on Laketran to do the design and everything because they wouldn't have the experience with the public bidding part of the project. We would want it to be along a Laketran county fixed route. And the current site would, our thought process is it would not currently have a sidewalk or transit amenities. So it could have a sidewalk, but it might not have transit amenities. Does that make sense? Like think of like there could be a section of Mentor Avenue that right now there's a bus stop, but there's no bench or shelter or anything like that, and maybe the city wants to improve the transit part of the area, but already has a sidewalk. And then the project would have to, obviously, this is a law, but we put it in here just to reiterate that the project would need to meet or exceed all ADA design criteria. We thought it would be good. This is the map of our fixed route system. And so there are a lot of opportunities around the county for sidewalks. Some of the big areas, and this is by no means an opinion of where they should go, but think about roads like Tyler Boulevard, Heisley, parts of Lakeshore, parts of Sun Center. There are some pretty busy roads that don't have sidewalks where our buses drive on, and the lack of a sidewalk could be a barrier to someone trying to use the bus. We also wanted to think of some ineligible activities. Some of the stuff that we thought, and again, this is just our opinion, any maintenance or preventative maintenance activities would not be permitted. Decorative landscaping would not be allowed. If the project was not along a fixed route, if it included any type of roadway improvements, and then we wanted to be specific that the sponsor could not be a business or non-for-profit. One of the objectives for us, at least, was to put a lot of the responsibilities for the project onto the project sponsor. So if I'm the city and I'm applying for money, the onus is on me to deliver the project. Laketran will oversee parts of it, but we would not be the ones doing all the actual work. And so what we would expect to happen in this process is the city would do all the engineering, design of the sidewalk. They would deal with all the permitting. If there were right of way or easement issues, they would be dealing with those, not us. That can get ugly, you know, we do not want to be, at least in my opinion, involved in, you know, we need 5 feet of someone's front yard, that should be us, that should be a city. They would be required from all of the public involvement activities. If they pair it with another grant, there can be mandatory public involvement processes included. We would have the option to include those, we haven't proposed them right now. Think of like, NOACA's TLCI projects, those have to have significant public involvement. So if that was required by another grant, they would have to do that, not us. They would also be bidding the construction, they would be construction oversight and traffic maintenance. Really, all we would be doing is, and I'll get to in a second, but is overseeing and making sure they're building it the way to include the transit components we think are important. Some of the evaluation criteria that we put together are, think of these are categories that would score points. And so each one of these would have a point value associated with it, and the closer it got to this description, the more points they might get. So we talked about a project that connects other sidewalks to create a complete corridor. So think about like little bits and pieces of sidewalk along the road. If you're connecting those, you will score more points because you're making a more congruent sidewalk system. If the project addresses a known pedestrian safety issue or hazard, and this might be known to Laketran or known to a city, they can come to us and part of the process and say, look, there's been 3 pedestrian accidents here in the last 3 years, their project might score a little higher. We also want to give them more points if they do have local money, so if we're only a part of the funding source, this is very typical, the more money someone brings to a grant, the more points they get. So say Mentor's doing $1 million project and they bring $500,000 to the project and ask us for $500,000, they will get more points because they're funding part of it themselves. The closer the project is to the construction / implementation phase, the more points. So this would be, you know, if they've already completed the design process and they're ready to go to bid, we would give them more points because they can execute that project a lot quicker. And then obviously we want to call out the transit piece. So let's say a city is, there's 2 cities applying for a project and one has, you know, no transit amenities, it's really just a sidewalk, and the other one includes a bunch of transit stop or a bunch of shelters and benches. We give them more points because the transit component was a little higher. So what we will involve, or really Laketran's responsibilities are after the applications have been approved by the board, is that we would be involved in these milestones. So we would review their 50% design drawings. So we would sit down with the project sponsor and go over the design with them, make sure that the transit component and make sure everything makes sense for us. We do the same thing again, the 90% drawings. Those are 2 pretty standard review times in the design process. We would oversee the bid results of the award, make sure everything's done correct BORC. And then at the end of construction, we would go out and physically review the asset or the sidewalks and make sure they're done exactly like they said they were supposed to be done. And then reimbursement for the expenses would be eligible at these milestones. So once they prove to us that that milestone has been complete, we could reimburse them for that part of the process thus far. And so that's sort of a general overview. I know that's kind of a lot of information, but you know, there's not necessarily any action required tonight. We did put together, if we wanted to move this forward quickly, this is what the schedule would look like. We're not under any pressure to do this. We just tried to put together what we thought might be a good process. We probably are not in a position to have this in the 2024 construction cycle. So these would probably be projects to be built in 25. It takes, for a typical grant process, you are in about a 6-month cycle, application review and all of that stuff. So our concept was, if we wanted to, again, no pressure here at all. We could talk about it tonight. If the board wanted to move forward with it and we approved it next month, this is what the kind of schedule will look like. Again, this was just a rough draft that we put out there for just kind of the conceptual process. The last thing about it is our intention is here to use 100% local funds. So they don't have to follow FTA requirements. Asking a city to follow FTA requirements would be challenging because they're not familiar with those. It would make it hard for them. There's also the extra layers of requirement that the FTA has. So if we wanted to use FTA funds, we could still do it. It would require a lot more effort on our staff's behalf, which we could do. Our plan is to everything submitted electronically. Yeah, so we would bring the highest grant projects to the board, and, you know, we talked a lot about what the budget should be. We kind of suggested $1 million here because that would let you do a really meaningful project. I tried to get, you know, pricing for how many feet of sidewalk would this build if we spent X number of dollars. So I had a conversation with Tim Landon, who's the city engineer for Willoughby and works at CT Consultants, and he said, in the last couple of years, they've done sidewalk projects where if it's a plain, flat, incredibly simple sidewalk, it's $60 a foot. He said, then if you get into more complicated sidewalks where you're dealing with like grades, utilities, you can be up into $240 a foot. And so there is a huge variance in how much sidewalk we could actually afford. And it would really depend on the project. So it's hard for me to say how many feet, like linear feet of sidewalk we could get. It would just depend on where the sidewalk is being built. You know, think of an example, if you're on the north side of Tyler Boulevard, there's a kind of significant grade right at the edge of the road, so you have to build a smaller retaining wall to fit a sidewalk there. So obviously, your expenses there would be a lot higher than if you did Highly, where as long as you have enough right of way, sidewalk would fit in a nice flat piece of land. But there may not be enough right of way, so then you have to talk about easements and stuff like that. So there's just so much variety, like I couldn't get a good, this is how much you would buy. But that's a lot of info. I don't know if anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments, we can talk through any of it, happy to go over it. Sure.
The sidewalk consideration, when there's such a variance, would that be a situation that you would do a not to exceed number? Would that be appropriate? Or how could you think you could approach it?
I think that one of the first steps would be the board would say how much money they want to spend on it, you know, and so you start out by saying we have $1 million. That's how most grants start, is whatever the authority is with the dollars, you know how much money they have. And in the award process, you can be awarded a percentage. Sometimes NOACA sometimes will go 10% above the amount they said they'll use. So there's different ways to do it. Because there's so much latitude in this, if the board saw a bunch of projects that it really liked and were slightly over or slightly under, you would have the leeway to approve that if you wanted to. But I would suggest that you pick a number to start with. And that's, you know, we're not gonna go beyond that. And if the cities, you know, inevitably we'll get applications for more than that amount. And we'll rank them the best project we can get. And, you know, maybe we get 2 projects that are each for $700,000. We could say we're gonna approve the one for $700,000. And then maybe we have a conversation with the other one and say, do you want 300? Do you want a delay? You know, there's different ways to handle it. It just depends on what you actually get from the community.
Yeah, just a points of clarification, but overall, good, comprehensive, layout. So you're looking at this with the matching, like they would bring you $200,000 that they want to do and you would match 200,000. Is that how you're doing it?
Well, the way we have it conceptualized is they would get more points for that, but they wouldn't necessarily have to have any.
Okay. And then would Laketran understand better the needs of some of the communities versus the actual municipalities or the cities of where certain amenities need to be? Like, would you guys, if let's just say some places weren't bidding, would you go out and say, hey, you guys should really consider a bench here, a shelter here?
What we would probably do, at least in the first round especially, is try and have an initial meeting to really talk about the project in detail and explain it to them. That's something we didn't think about, is getting on the front end, if we should talk about where the amenities should be. That's something we could include in a sort of a pre-bid, or it wouldn't be a pre-bid, but a pre-application meeting, where if we said, hey, if you're thinking about Paisley, for example, we know that this stuff is busy, you guys should include some there, that's something we could definitely include, probably a good idea.
And then the last part, Roger, do you view this as just a one-time funding as far as, hey, we're gonna give you this money, but then you're responsible for concrete maintenance, sealing, all that kind of stuff?
Yes, with the one exception that if there is a little structure that we put up, we would maintain that, but other than that, yeah. Sidewalk is yours, it's your city's asset, we are not involved in maintenance in any way, shape, or form.
Got it, thank you.
Sure.
Ben, you just said that, the cities have the ability to ask the state or federal, or whatever money grants to do sidewalks. Why are we funding sidewalks? And I understand there are longer routes. I think we should fund the amenities and all that other stuff, but sidewalks are the city's responsibility. I don't get why they want to spend Laketran dollars on something that the city should be able to do that now. They've got all kinds of funding available in the municipality. It makes no sense to me to look at even $1 in the city, on the roads. I mean, if we start that, then they're gonna want to do all the sidewalks. I don't get it. I just don't see any Laketran money going for building sidewalks that are the responsibility of another entity. And I get the idea of the amenities. I understand that. Makes no sense to me. Don't we have a approval in this board package for $300,000 for projects along Route 91?
Yeah,
Isn't that a sidewalk project?
it's a combo, yes, there's shelters and sidewalk.
Why in the world are we spending money on those sidewalks? That's the city of Roadview for crying out loud. We have tons of them.
That one has some nuance to it, that it's really a combination of sidewalk and shelter.
Are they all?
Are all.
Any sidewalk put in? I mean, a combination of sidewalk and shelter.
Well, in this application that we're proposing, or this process, it wouldn't necessarily have to include a shelter. The main reason that we kind of conceptualize this is that you are right, it is a city's responsibility to put in sidewalks, but sidewalk dollars are relatively hard to get at the federal and state level, which is why you see lapses in sidewalk all over the community. So this was our thought, one of the ways to use the COVID money effectively is to help kind of fill in those gaps. But this is completely up to the board's discretion as to how they do or don't want to move forward with it in any sort of any way.
You're not my voter ready.
Ben, you mentioned, board approval. Would you have a minimum level where the board would make an approval, or are you expecting every bid with board approval?
So I would expect it to work in a similar way to the way we have things approved now is once we complete the evaluation of the projects, we would bring you a list of the proposed projects, how they scored, what the dollar amount are and all those things. And we would say, okay, here's where staff has made a recommendation. Now, board, you can approve each project individually or as a slate. And once that dollar amount is spent, it's kind of like we'd have to work on legal phraseology a little bit. We'd also given me the authority to transfer the money to the city at the sort of milestone, the milestones we have laid out.
And we wouldn't expect any legality issues. It would be complicated, and we would have the authority to do this legally.
Yes.
Okay. Do you, have you ever, like, I hate saying do, have we, because it's all up. Do we have a listing of bus stop? I know 91 has come up a couple times, it's a very sort of dangerous. Do we have a list of other bus stop facilities or rider facilities that might rise to the top of the list because of a hazardous kind of condition? Have we ever put anything like that together?
Yeah, I think we could probably, if we were to take on something like this, I want to do a little better job than we have. A lot of our knowledge is anecdotal, and I would want to put it into a document, really zero in on it. You know, we track all the customer complaints from the different locations, but a lot of times the challenges with the bus stops is we need the municipality to help us because it might be right of way, it could be easements, there's all kinds of reasons, and so a lot of times we wait until a third party pushes the project before we try and tackle it.
Well, so my memory is from from time to time with that. I believe at some point, months ago, you talked about doing an inventory of the various stops in Lake County. Would this be part of that?
Yeah, one of the things I kind of wanted to do for a long time that I talked to my team about is doing an inventory, but also a ranking where we say a bus stop with this much traffic should have X amenities. A bus stop with this much traffic should have X amenities, and be able to rank them and say, you know, this is a top 5% bus stop, it should have these things, and have a category, so that when we look at a bus stop, we sort of have a metric to say, what should this look like? You know, most of them are gonna be a pole and sign, but that top, you know, busiest 5 to 10%, you know, maybe should have more. And I would like to potentially do that.
Well, from my perspective, I think this is a very interesting opportunity for us to improve the capability, if you will, for safe, access for riders. And I would like to see this should begin the criteria, not so much that, something that's very simple, simply because it's simple, but really ranking because of complex and or dangerous kinds of conditions. And to me, that would be the logical place to start.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there would be extra points for that to rise to the top.
A lot of times we usually hear about the safety pieces on the fringes. The cities are the ones who really will know a lot of the safety hazard stuff because their police departments will track the incidents, and that is public information, so I'm sure we can work with them in advance, but part of why we include that in the criteria was to try and get them to bring that to us and say, hey, this is, this location is really dangerous, and hopefully make that fix.
It sounds like it would make a lot of sense to do this detailed inventory, have these conversations with the city before we actually formally open up the grant process.
We could, the one of the things that we don't know is there is a lot of work that goes into doing this on the applicant's end. And so even if a bus stop has, or even if there's a bunch of known safety issues, the city still has to be motivated to deal with it. And we assume they all would be, but different cities have different capabilities. Like the city of Mentor, they have multiple traffic engineers on staff, and they have a whole engineering department where other cities don't. And so we might know that a bus stop needs attention, but the municipality that sponsors that bus stop might not apply. So there is a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing, because you just don't know, quite honestly, Mentor and Willoughby are two that we thought that they should be some of the first people submitting applications to this. Mentor has lots of sidewalks that are places that need sidewalks and lots of staff capacity to move a project forward. Or Willoughby has needs, they don't have quite as much staff. So we don't know exactly, but we could we didn't want to reach out to the cities in advance of anything else. So we could certainly have like invite them to have a learning experience. So are you interested? We should apply for this. We could go to that next learning step if the board would like us to, but this, at least in our opinion, this was a step one forward engaging outside partners.
Well, that would make a lot more sense than just approach it as if they will come.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good first step.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree. I think, getting more information and speaking with the different municipalities is a good idea, but my question is, who on the team here would be responsible? You said that you guys would review the criteria and score them. Who would be responsible for that? And would it be adding an extra burden onto their already complicated day?
We did talk about that a little bit. Most of this work falls into Andrea's category as far as processing and keeping track of all of it. As far as the review component, we talked about if it was just staff, that it would be, me, Andrea, at least Matt from operations, maintenance, and kind of a lot of times we open up to anyone who really feels passionate about the project. We also talked about, if the board wanted to be involved more in the review process, that's also a possibility. It would be very open to what the preferences are, but at a minimum, you have me, Andrea, Matt, and probably Keith.
Yeah, one other thing, you said to spend some of the COVID money, I thought the COVID money was gone.
Well, yes, the actual grant money spent, but there's still roughly $10 million in our bank, that is a result of the COVID funds that still have sitting there.
So it's not gone.
Well, the actual grant dollars were spent. There's $10 million in sales tax cash that is sitting in the bank from the process, so.
So it's gone. $10 million and something is gone.
There's $10 million in cash as a result of the COVID pandemic.
Not to be argumentative, but I thought it was. Not to be argumentative, but I thought it was 20 million.
Well, I was subtracting the $12 million amount from the sales tax. So yes, today you are correct.
I like the concept you put here, you put a lot of work into it. I think it's something that would be very beneficial for the agency to pursue.
I think, if I'm correct, what I'm hearing is, we'll have a workshop with municipalities, get their feedback, and then bring back to you what the results of that are, and kind of go from there. Is that, see, nods. All right.
The only piece of feedback I would offer is, the initial budget of $1 million, in my opinion, it sounds a little rich, but I'm not sure what I'm honestly basing that off of. Other than any personal opinion, I don't have the context to relate it to anything. In my opinion, it sounds like $1 million would buy a lot of sidewalk. But I didn't know if you were picturing this would be an annual thing where there's $100,000 in the annual budget allocated to this program, or if it was a one-time shot.
Yeah, I really think that is ultimately up to the board. I think I would envision there being a concept, or a conversation every year of, do we want to fund this? Do we not want to fund it, and how much? The reason we picked $1 million is we were trying to think of sort of a way to do meaningful projects. As you guys saw, construction is just expensive nowadays, and $1 million sounds like a lot, but it doesn't go as far as we all would think it would. Unfortunately.
Well, yeah, if you were gonna talk about one that's by itself is $400 million.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the, when we get to the other ones in the agenda, the Willoughby project is just under $500,000 total, so our share is about around 250, the city's share is around 250, and that is to fill in gaps on 91 on the west side of the road, so there's still a lot of other sidewalk to do, which is why but again, this number is out there, so it could be whatever the board would like to be. Yeah, no.
I believe those initial meetings are going to guide you in what the budget process should be. When you start talking to the cities, you get a better feel for what's out there, what it can be done and so on. Like, you have a better idea what the project budget level should be.
Yeah, we'll bring back any feedback they have from us. Maybe they have a project they're about to do, or they've done one, they can give us some information about, we'll investigate, bring all that back.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Moving on to our first agenda item, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Matt for the finance presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Before I dive in, I want to let the board know that we are full steam ahead with the Ohio checkbook. I have committed, published 2 years of data by month. So that is out there on the website and available for public consumption.
How do you access it?
All right.
How do you access it?
Just go to the Ohio checkbook website. I will give you, I will send you one for that.
Well, if you go to the website, that's easy, but then you have to go down to the entity that you're using, and where's that in the Ohio website? I looked at it earlier, I didn't see where you could get into it.
I put together instructions to access that information where it's at. No problem.
Will you send it to the full board, please?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you.
Couple caveats here on that, we get about 30 characters of a description for each transaction, so it's not super descriptive. The other thing is, there's all the capital purchases are out there. Typically 80% of that we got reimbursed for. But they're all listed out there in their entirety, which is fine, if you want to add that. So,
Yeah, let me ask you one question real quick. So I'm on the Ohio Open checkbook and I can see everything. Is it a monthly process or is it quarterly? How often does it get updated?
it is monthly, we are going to be sending a monthly file shortly after we close each month.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so for the January operating results, one of the things I wanted to note is, jumping to the bottom line, we're favorable in the net income. Slightly off on the revenue, but that's a little bit misleading. We get, monthly reimbursements for preventive maintenance, but only after a threshold of spend kicks in, which is typically around March. Now, that's not how we budgeted it. We budgeted straight line, so we are performing the expectation of the top line. It's just a little off compared to budget right now, but nonetheless favorable on the expenses, drove us to a favorable net income. Driving down in that detail, if I can advance those. Again, you'll see in the federal and state line, and that's on the top line due to that category. The favorability from the expenses primarily are from the wages and benefits. We seem to be very aggressive on the benefits in the budget, or conservative, depending on how you want to look at it, but the primary expense favorability was driven from that category. Then moving on to our cash balance, 58.2, almost 58.3 million in funds, of which we have total committed of 20.5. We have a revised operating reserve. That number has gone up slightly based on the new year. For uncommitted funds, we have 37.7 million. That capital plan number was extended through 2028, so that number changed a little bit from the prior month as well. So in summary, 20 million plus of committed, 37, almost 38 million of uncommitted. Okay, moving on to FCS, not a lot of volume here at all in January, pretty small dollars actually. A couple things to note, I guess, we did receive a year's worth of revenue from two of our senior centers paid for a year in advance, so we're amortizing that over the entire year. I'm only representing 1 month here. Similar on the operating expenses, we pay for our storage quarterly in advance, so basically amortize that over the next 3 months as well, but minimal on to $1,400. Again, you can see the detail. Fares are off the projection, and the expenses conversely are higher in every category. Okay, moving on to Geauga. Similarly, they had a low month, if you will. Typically, the state funding for Geauga is awarded later in the year. We did receive that award in February, but we haven't actually received the funds. And we will receive that later in the year, but similarly, the budget was kind of straight line, so it's not a great comparison at this point in the year. Drilling down on that. You can see federal state zero, that the only revenue was fair revenue, and virtually favorable in every category and expenses as well. Any questions I can answer for anybody?
It's a curious question. Is it typical for the senior centers to pay in a year in advance?
I guess one of them did last year. It's the first time we got 2 of them. Just one total.
Did we place an order for our FGF bus?
we have talked to the vendor, they are gonna be having a bus on site. I believe it is next week or the week after, and we are coordinating that with the senior center directors to come look at it and give us their input, so. Should be finalizing the order hopefully in a couple weeks, but we wanted to get a bus on site so people can see and kind of touch it before we actually place the order.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the January 2024 Laketran STS and Geogga operating financial statements subject to audit and capital plan review? Motion being amended, normally is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Swanson, Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
McNamee,
Yes,
Nunley,
Yes.
Peacemo,
Yes.
Sheets.
Yes.
Stanger.
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna turn the meeting back over to Ben to talk about how expensive sign really is.
I'm actually gonna keep this one over, Matt's gonna walk us through the Matt operations, walk us through.
Oh, my apologies, Matt.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Before we get started on this,
Sure.
we have our drivers required CDL.
So it depends on the bus they're driving, so dial ride buses do not require CDL, but both the fixed route and the commuter express buses do. So we have a process that requires all full-time drivers to have CDL, so about half of our workforce is required to have CDL.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Okay, so our in-house training department actually does all of our CDL training. And currently, annually, we train about 20 people for their CDLs. And approximately 450 hours a year is on maneuverability. So just recently, the state changed the CDL testing program. The last testing program was actually put in place in 2005, so it was quite old. And with that change, they actually have a new maneuverability course. It requires a 280 foot by 40 foot area, so quite a bit larger than most of our sites. So we did an analysis of all the different sites that we currently own, and we determined that the Madison parking lot would be the best location for a training site of this size. And we wanted to make sure that if we put a training site there, we could make it to where we could turn it back into a parking lot if a large event were needed, or we needed parking for a large event, like the Cavs winning or the Browns maybe. It could happen. So this is what this site looks like. The site work is a lot of where you see the kind of dotted areas, that's all concrete. We're moving 2 light poles, creating a couple different entrances and putting a gated area around this. I put the bus in there to kind of, the blue and white bus in there to kind of help give a little bit of perspective. So there's 4 different maneuverabilities that they have to do in that site. So they have to do a forward stop, and I know that sounds kind of silly, but they have to go to a certain spot and make sure that their tire is within so many feet of a cone. Then they have to do a straight line backing to make sure that they can back into a spot. Then they have to do a offset backing and an offset forward and an offset back. So they'll actually turn the bus and kind of go to the bottom left-hand corner of that of the area there, and then put the bus back into the previous location.
Does that have to be on concrete?
Not necessarily. This is all asphalt out there. That is a good consideration. In the summer, it will, we will tear up a little bit of it. That's why we want to section it off, make sure that it will last as long as we can.
How often is this used?
Well, we do 470 training hours a year, and You know, that's,
And this
it's
site,
all throughout the year, so.
and this site, 400 and training out for, yeah. Right like this,
But we would use this site for that 470 training hours,
where's
yes.
it done now?
Well, currently, there's smaller courses that we can utilize, like behind our building. We can do our backing into a certain spot. We do different maneuverability pieces of it in different places. But since it's all one big course, we can't do that anymore. We used to be able to split it up. We can't. Does that make sense?
No,
No? Okay.
this is because of the change they made. to the-
That's correct, yes.
You can enlarge the other areas to compensate for their changes.
It's not big enough now.
And why do we have to spend 300 or whatever the number is, $1,000 to put concrete over the existing asphalt? I don't think.
We're not putting concrete over the asphalt, we're filling in islands there and creating a training course.
Are you gonna be able to convert back to parking?
If needed, yes. Yeah, if the Browns won the Super Bowl and we needed to, you know, convert it back to parking for a day, we could.
So you know where it's not gonna freeze over anytime soon. I just don't understand why you just can't pay some money on the already existing asphalt.
Because there are actual islands of, you know, concrete and, light poles and stuff in the way, that's why.
Nobody's using it for water. I mean, there's 300-car parking lot in Denver or something like that.
So Mentor is utilized more than Madison. We did consider that, but we would have to, actually close off portions of the parking lot, and it's utilized so much more than Madison that it wouldn't make sense.
You know, man, I drive by that parking lot every day, and the entire north end of it is essentially four cars. I'm not sure that I agree with what you just said. There are cars in there, but if you look at the way people park, it's spread all over the entire parking lot. If you condense where they can actually park, I'm wondering if you can't fit that in there. If you go in to the main entrance, correct me if I'm wrong, if you go in the main entrance, and you said everybody parks to the right. We should be able to fit this to the left.
It would be very tight, and I don't know if we'd have the 80-foot offset in the back. I think it would be pretty tight to do that. We looked at that,
80-foot, what's the 80-foot bus?
where the bus is in the back right there. There has to be 80 feet of backing space at the end of that.
Are there islands in there?
No, there are rifles. Yeah.
But you can't utilize it for parking, then. We didn't put it 80-foot.
The general concept of why we pick Madison is it's a lot less disruptive to the customers. And so, but the problem with Madison is specifically, you see the landscape islands, those are sort of the big obstacle. There are also 2 light poles. So the majority of the expense of this is in really removing those islands, making them concrete, and then moving the light poles. There's also, if you see on the bottom left of the drawing, there's a new driveway apron, so the bus doesn't have to drive. It's counting into the parking lot of the bus right now. The parking lot is designed for cars. And so this, what Matt is talking about being able to use as a parking lot is only chained on. And so the parking spaces are maintained. So if we needed to use it for parking, we still could, but most of the time it would be chained on with the training course.
Did you put the new apron and sidewalk in the bottom left, and have them come in from the bottom and use that whole slip right there going, I don't know, if this all called north to south?
We looked at it, we still have to move, some of the islands, and the problem with that was it looks like it'll fit lengthwise, but it ends up not quite fitting. that was.
Yeah, the 208 foot, that's good there.
The other reason that we picked Madison is Madison usually has very few cars in it. This parking lot, you know, there are only 2 departures in the morning and 2 at night, a lot less customer traffic, and they leave the course, easier here than it was in there. We have similar expenses in the matter. Light poles and bus access and cording and all, so the costs don't change too much. The landscape islands probably would need to be addressed in the matter. But we still spend at least on my put poles in the ground and kind of cord off, because the last thing you want is somebody parking in it. You know, if we have training in the morning, we have to keep it segregated so that a commuter parks there, or we can't, I'm sorry, so that a commuter can't park there and disrupt the training process.
Could we clarify what the cost is? I know CT sent over a letter, is it the 216, 190, 160?
Yeah, so,
And does that include the contingency?
no, the total amount we are requesting tonight is the 237, 810, 760.
Okay, so it's 237, 810, 76. I see there includes a 10% contingency.
That's correct. So basically, AJ submitted their bid, there were some math errors that CT didn't catch until we already sent the information out to the board. So obviously, we don't like to do that, you know, it was a little bit of a short turnaround this month. And so it got this, and that's why I sent out the email to the board, the updated pricing. AJ was still cheapest. Yeah.
So would you say that this is essential for the agency to have a proper training course?
Yeah, I mean, the current way we do training is not possible because of the change in the training course. And so we have to do something somewhere to have a training course that we can reliably use every day. And so really the only 2 choices we have are Mentor or Madison. The reason we picked Madison is it's least disruptive for the customers.
Well, what is the matter? Parking lot, how is it being utilized now that, everybody wants to work from home? What's the utilization percentage there? Versus what it used to be?
Park ride has been slowly coming back. I think it's above 50% now. So I think it's at like 4 to like 53% of what it was.
How many cars is that?
I don't know the number of cars off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
I'll bet there aren't more than 30 cars in that parking lot every day on average. But that's just a guess on my part.
There's roughly 300 parking. You have it on Google Maps.
Yeah, I think we have 330 is the number that sticks out of my head, parking spaces in there. I think there's probably more than 30 cars, so my guess is they're probably more like 60 to 75, maybe 80. So there is, in theory, you could put this at the Mentor parking lot. It is very tight to fit in Mentor, just like it is in Madison. And so there's gonna be technical issues we have to pay to remediate any of them on.
Is there an alternate to the train? Do we have to do it in-house? Is there something we can send drivers to do this?
There used to be, basically the state has gotten very strict regulation, and so now all the places that are left are private trucking companies that only train for Class A truck licenses. So we used to send people off site a long time ago, and the reason our training department is kind of evolved into what it is because there isn't anybody else to send people to. So
What does, say, Cleveland do?
they train themselves. All of our peers have training, just like we do.
Could we subcontract on that? Did we even ask the question?
We have talked to them about that. They have not been particularly open to it in the past. Mainly for insurance reasons, they would have to get trained on their vehicles, which really has some challenges. We actually are, at this point, we are training, under contract to employees from Woodway. We're doing training for the city because they don't have a place to set them.
Question about the cost. Whether this was done in Mentor or Madison, would these costs you have listed at the bottom change significantly?
I don't think you see a significant change, we have to have it engineered and give you the exact answer, but because I don't remember how well, we did initial looks to see how well it fit in Manor, and it didn't fit super well. So we could go back and do that, but there'll be some decent expenses no matter where we put it.
So there would be additional expenses at Manor because of the finish issue, did I understand you correctly?
I mean, well, there would be additional expenses in that we would have to have the engineering done, we would have to start the engineering process over again, so we'd spend additional funds in the engineering design process, but the construction would still have, there still would be construction to it, there's still light bulbs have to get moved. We still have to put up the bollards and the gate or the chains turning such to keep people out, so there will be expenses regardless. To the exact number, I'm not sure. There would be a little bit less concrete work.
So given the issues at Manor in terms of space, it may or may not necessarily come out higher.
I don't think it would come out higher, but I don't know how much cheaper it would be. And but I guess it could be higher if you had to spend the second set of engineering and design costs.
Well, I think we need to do a study on how much, the utilization of the parking rights are before and after we have that information going. We know how many people are using it prior to the pandemic, now we know how many people are continuing to use it now. Maybe that space west, east of the driveway to Menor might be available without not even worrying about the spaces you're taking. I mean,
Well,
be closer for everybody, be closer for the Cleveland people that are training, certainly be closer for us here, for our people we're training. This would be a good, don't we have a space around here and our company, it's big enough there?
we used to before they changed the regulations, but not anymore. Now the only two places that this can physically be accommodated on our property are at Manor or Mass.
Better makes a heck of a lot more sense. Either are we gonna continue to have parking right management? If we don't get a turn around in the ridership out there. We talked about this before. What happened with the pandemic where people weren't working home and the companies was putting, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Manor ridership is rebounding a lot better than Mass. So the potential for the Manor site to have more cars in it long term is a lot more significant than the potential for the Madison site, which is another reason why we thought the Madison site was a better place for this to go.
Well, we shut the Madison side down.
That this would be all by itself out there, it would be encouraged.
We're maintaining that to the clean driver. I'm going to do it. A lot of people have seen it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's our industry, it's every single transit system in the state trains their own roads. I mean, it's just a normal thing. There really aren't outside training resources for bus drivers. Schools do it themselves, we do it ourselves. It's just how
Out the schools.
they train themselves. They're facing the same challenges we are, I imagine. We haven't talked about it, it's we talked about trying to do joint training at one point, they have been super interested.
In what?
They have not been very interested.
Cities will be announced, it's now faced with this
Yeah.
requirement.
Ms. Tanger, you had a comment?
I just wondered, when do all of these changes come into effect? I'm assuming there's some kind of like deadline where you have to have it done by, July 1st or whatever, what kind of timeline are we working?
It's actually already started. They just put it into place in October of last year. That's when we started this process. they haven't actually, like, they put the criteria into place, but they haven't actually tested anybody yet. That should be about May is what we're anticipating.
When you say testing, what do you mean?
The actual CDL test where the driver has to actually go and.
So the actual
Maneuverability.
The actual CDL test has not changed yet. You're anticipating it will be changing in May.
Yes.
So at that point, any drivers that train that test after in sometime in May, let's say, will need to be prepared
Yes.
to be able to pass on the new standard.
Yes, we've sectioned off a couple parts of the Metro Park and Ride to try it out for right now, just to get our drivers, the drivers who are in training used to it, so then they're prepared for it going forward.
Okay, so if you're already using another park and ride for the purpose, how is it going?
It's been very difficult because we've had issues with people parking in the middle of it. And it's been very difficult with space. That's what I've been, that's what we've experienced so far. Yes.
My questions are for you also. Are you done, Ken?
I am, thank you.
Okay. How many CDL training groups do you anticipate would be going through this training annually?
At least 20, that's our average. And this year, we're probably looking at a lot more. We just approved more full-time positions. We do CDLs for all of our full-time positions, so we can utilize them in all manners.
And once they are CDL certified, how often are they retested or relicensed?
They don't have to be relicensed. Once they obtain their CDL, that's it. Is that what you're asking?
Sorry, but my point.
We do retraining and stuff like that, but as far as relicensing, you don't have to.
Is a CDL similar to a driver's license and it expires?
Oh, yes, yeah. But you just have to go to the BMV and renew it. It's not, you don't have to go through the whole
Further
test.
test run.
Correct.
Okay, so we're looking at an average of 20 trainings a year.
Correct.
And there is a cost to doing the training.
Yes.
Would that cost change in any way if we went from Madison to Merritt?
In my opinion, I think that Madison is a better place because we also have to have a certain amount of time behind the wheel. And going from here to Madison on 90 is one of the hardest stretches of road that we have because there's a lot of wind that's blowing, the bus all around. I personally think that it's a better opportunity because we give them the behind the wheel time in a harder location and they get to train maneuverability when they get done or whenever they get out there. So I personally think it's a better location.
Let me ask a question then.
Yes.
If I understand what we talked about, the only required CDLs are for large buses. We have chosen to require our driver to get CDL for a parking ride. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand that?
Parking and ride is CDL required.
Parking ride is CDL required.
Yes.
Yes. Every non-dial ride bus requires a scale. Yes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I've got confused. You're right. Okay, so park and ride needs it, but not dial or ride.
Correct. Yes.
But we're requiring our dial ride drivers to get a CDL, is that?
Only if they're full time. And so the way it works, so fixed route drivers have to have a CDL and so do part-time drivers. So we own roughly 40 buses that require a CDL. All of the full-time drivers are required to have a CDL. One, it's in the union contract, but two, when a fixed route can't be fulfilled because the driver calls off, the full-time drivers, if they're on dial are slotted into that. So the fact they're capable of doing it is a backup plan. And keep in mind that even though it's 40 buses, those 40 buses take 60 people to operate them because of the hours and the multiple shifts. So, okay.
Which is consistent with the tradition Laketran has had in doing a lot of cross training, so they don't end up with not having the correct people to drive the buses or whatever other projects are.
Yes, we are unique when we don't segregate our drivers like RTA does. They
Thank
have
you, that's what I was.
a paratransit division and a fixed route division. We're blended, so that gives us a lot more flexibility and it lowers our total manpower needs because it's the same group of backup drivers for both sides of the house.
That's what I was trying to say, thanks for applying the correct phraseology.
Any other questions for Ben?
Matt, you mentioned driving on Route 90 from here to Madison,
Yes.
being a treacherous route for the drivers. What are you doing now?
I'm sorry.
What are you doing now for training on that particular route? You say one of the advantages of Madison that requires the driver to drive on Route 90 from here to there.
Well, we definitely take them out there.
Well, so you're already doing that anyway.
Exactly. That's why it made a lot of sense to put the training site out there as well. You know,
You're already doing that. I still think that is a better place to do it.
But what's the engineering cost? I'm sorry, just out of your answer, maybe it was in here and I missed it.
What was the engineering cost? I'm honored to give me the back. I think it was like $22,000.
And then one other thing, Matt.
yes.
If you develop roughly the utilization of the diameter of the parking lot over the years, we should have that information. Part of the pandemic and after the pandemic, we got 300 parking places and we're only using 100 of them for like 30 years. It doesn't make any sense to worry about how much space there is. We should be able to fit with the thing in there.
Are you asking for ridership data? The ridership data is in GoVenda, or are you asking for something different?
The utilization of the ridership data wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because some people come there with 2 or 3 people.
We don't track the cars in the lot in any way, so we don't have historical like car counts of
And I
the.
guess ridership from the partners would be,
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions for Ben?
One question, so the Madison parking ride and the Leonard parking ride, when were they designed? Like how old are they?
Better parking lot is 2003, Keith, yeah, and Madison is 99,
I wanna say
97. The late 90s for Madison, I don't remember the exact year, and Better was like 2003.
Get out from the Mentor Civic Center.
Any other questions or comments for Ben? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-009, authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute a contract with A&J Cement Contractors for the construction of a training site at the Laketran Madison Park and Ride at a cost not to exceed $237,810.76.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stanger. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
McNamee,
Yes,
Nunley,
Begrudgingly, yes.
Peaceville,
Yes.
Steve,
no,
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
No,
Okay, thank you, that has passed. The next item on our agenda is a purchase of a dial ride bus, and are we going to turn this over to Joanna now?
yes.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, transit has, like Laketran, we have a process that we turn over annually is pre-return useful life. There's one bridge the useful life with that a grant award to replace that one where they pay 80% and we pay 20%. It's over the minimum of 7 years, 180,000. It's we're looking to replace one of them. The federal share will be 104, local share will be 40,000, so it'll be $144,000 to replace that bus. Any questions on that?
Is the bus just like our? Right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Local share is normally 20%, 25.
Yeah, the way, or the way geography formulas work, it is a little different in this case, so it's just like, what was the slope share, like. Close to 40. Now the state chose to give them money.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-010, authorizing CEO or his designee to purchase one gasoline Dial-A-Ride bus from the Ohio Department of Transportation at a cost not to exceed $144,000?
Mhm.
Motion made by Ms. McAfee, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stanger. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
McAfee,
Yes,
Dudley.
Yes.
Peaceville,
Yes.
Sheets,
No,
Stanger.
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Okay, we are now going to move on to the city of Willoughby, where I believe Ben, that's the resolution that was on everyone's. That's when they came into.
That is correct. So before I start, real quick, I did replace the resolution for you. There are two highlighted sections. I think when Brandon typed this, there were two documents in the original email from the city. I think he just accidentally looked at the wrong one. So the first whereas the total amount should be $480,000 for the total project. Interestingly, in the next section where the fee percentage split is, that is correct. Then in the next whereas, in the continuing section of that whereas, the Laketran amount should be $202,000 versus it was originally listed as 100. Apologize for the error on that one.
So on this one that you passed out today, it says whereas the state and the MOU total construction cost is expected to be 380 and 480 calculated.
No, I didn't, I'm sorry, that's my fault. I did not change the word in there. It should say 400.
I was gonna say the words and the numbers don't match.
Yeah, I apologize. I caught it last minute today and I was.
Interesting, the same thing on Saturday.
Same thing on the other one.
152, but the dollars kind of.
Yes, the yellow number is the correct number.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this project we've talked about a decent amount in the past, but I want to give extra background tonight. So, this is it's a joint project, the city will be do, sidewalk enhancements and enhance the transit, facilities on this, on South Center. So South Center Road is served by Laketran Route 2. Route 2 is normally our second busiest route, but there are some months out there in the past that it has been the busiest route. So it is a pretty well used section of our fixed route system. There are currently 13 bus stops on Sunset Road. 5 of them are not adjacent to a sidewalk at all. They're just in grass in someone's yard, and there's one of them in a pretty weird place. There is one passenger waiting shelter up by a medical facility that's changed names so many times. I don't remember the name of it, but it's next to Burger King. If you guys know the area, I don't remember what the name of the medical facility is.
Kaiser Permanente.
Of all the places we get complaints about passenger access and waiting environments, this is one of the highest ones. Specifically at the Wendy's and Walgreens down by 84. So Sunset Road has some sidewalks, but neither the east or west side has a complete sidewalk all the way from State Route 84 to Euclid Avenue. So the city will be, quite a while ago, kicked off the plan to build a mixed-use trail on the east side of the road. Costs got too high on that, so they dialed it back, and they are using some of their COVID dollars to fill in the sidewalks on the west side of the road. we had been, part of the process from the beginning with the mixed use trail. We weren't gonna build a trail, we were gonna make sure that the bus stops were connected to it and everything was kind of a congruent, facility. So when it changed, we had a conversation with them, and they said, we're gonna do sidewalks, we'd like to add transit shelters to the project. We said, that's great, the one at Wendy's has been a problem for quite a while. So there are 4 shelters involved in this project. So, 2 of them are, these stars here, the one on the bottom of the picture is Big Turtle 1. The star on the top of the picture is Stone Building Apartments. Both of these sites are places the city expressed a strong desire to have shelters for based on resident feedback. We have heard from the residents at Big Turtle 1 that they would like a better waiting environment. There's one of the ones that right now is just in grass. The other 2 sites are ones I am particularly excited about. These are at the essentially intersection of 91 and 84. This Walgreens and Wendy's is a pretty busy stop for us. We interestingly, normally complaints come to us from our riders. In this particular spot, complaints come from non-riders. And they complain, they see people waiting at the stop and they say, why don't those people have a bench? There was a senior using the stop for a long time that we got a complaint almost every day from the same gentleman saying, I can't believe you're letting that lady stand there. And so this is a place, we've got a lot of feedback. The city has got a lot of complaints also. There's a gentleman who uses a wheelchair that accesses, it's not quite in my picture, but just to the top of the picture is I believe it's a Fifth Third Bank, and he drives his wheelchair on 91 in traffic to get to the bank, which is, as you can imagine, an incredible safety hazard. And so the city is very passionate about completing this project also. And I'm really excited. We have not had good luck getting the landlord to respond to us. To put a shelter here, we have tried multiple times. I have gone to Walgreens myself, trying to get phone numbers, and they've just been non-responsive. So this is one of those times the city has a big stick, and the city can say, we're doing it, deal with it. And that's essentially what's happening. So there's gonna be, the plan to set a shelter at that, kind of where that star is, and then across the street. Where that star is a very technically challenging location because of utilities. There's a catch basin, traffic light, a little rock thing, I don't know how to describe it. And so this is really gonna do quite a lot for our riders and just the general public, in general, overall. And so, it's really a pretty neat project. This is part of what started our thought about having a sidewalk grant program. So the total cost of the project is $480,000, or that's the construction estimate. Our share is $252,000, the city share is $228,000. So this will deliver a per shelter price of $63,000, which sounds like a lot. But when you look at how much these projects are costing us when we do them by ourselves, this is half price. So the AWT shelter was just under $140,000. The Laketran shelter, it had 2 shelters on one concrete pad, but it was $166,000. So this is a really good deal for us. We also, there's not as much labor for us, the city is leading the procurement, so our staff doesn't have to go through the effort. It is, we will enter, this action allows us to enter into an MOU, and then we will transfer funds to the city to complete the project. So for us, this is a win-win, I think. It's less staff effort and it is a lower cost per shelter for the total project. Just like I said, the city will manage the sidewalk portion. They're dealing with any easements or right-of-way concerns. We are out of that conversation. Once the sidewalks are all done, we will provide our labor to install the shelters. So our facilities folks have a lot of experience installing them, so that is the most cost-effective way to move that forward. So this action authorizes the MOU and the expenditure of the dollars to the city for the project, which is in the resolution. And Brandon has already been in contact with Mike Lucas from the city of Willoughby, and they're both in agreement on the language in the MOU. So everything is basically ready for us to approve. And I believe this is on the city's agenda for next week or week after. It's very close to being out for approval. Mayor Fiala wanted us to be, he asked that we approve it first since we are a larger share of the funds and that it would require significant change to the project. We backed out as a partner. So I think this is really a great project to deliver, 4 shelters for a reduced cost and less effort.
And a few years back, you said shelters are 25,000.
To purchase the actual shelter building, Did I try my?
Well, I thought you told that was the cost of the shelter.
Pre-COVID, that was the cost to buy a little building, now the price is around $40,000. We're in the wrong business, right? We should go through this.
If the city is spearheading the project and they're, really interested in it, and everything, why are we carrying the larger percentage?
It's mainly because of the cost of the transit entities. So for us, I don't have a percentage off the top of my head, but the cost of a project for us, the cost of the little building and its installation and everything is significant compared to just the sidewalk. And so when you factor in the fact that those little buildings are roughly $40,000 a piece, $160,000 of our cost is just the little buildings.
What's the price differential between what we're gonna be responsible for and what they, I don't know about that on there. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so their piece is purely sidewalks. We have, little buildings, the concrete pads they sit on, there's small sections of sidewalk to make them kind of make sense and connect to each other. Yeah.
So the cost has nothing to do with the sidewalks?
There is some sidewalk in the project that we are responsible for, yes.
$250,000 just for the buildings?
About 180, 160 of it is just little buildings, yes.
So what's the rest of it?
There's parts of the sidewalks, there are some benches, there is concrete pads for the buildings to go on. The site,
Total cost of the building, 40,000 plus what?
it varies by site. I mean, just the building itself, the order from the company shipped to this building is around $40,000.
So they're paying for all the sidewalks.
There, for the sidewalk, there are some parts of the sidewalk we are paying for also.
Why are we paying for any part of the sidewalk? Earlier in their thing, it said they were responsible for the sidewalk in total. Didn't it say that in there somewhere?
Not all of the sidewalk, there is some sidewalk, so for example, there's a piece of the way you have to build a sidewalk to accommodate the transit shelters, you have to sort of bend the sidewalk around the shelters, you have to do some kind of complicated engineering to fit it in the right of way, so we are taking care of that part of the sidewalk, because it's a component of the shelter being there.
So the sidewalk part that we are responsible for is only parts that are directly related to the installation of the transit amenities.
Yes.
Any other questions for Ben? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-011 authorizing the CEO to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Willoughby to construct, repair, and replace sidewalks, bus stops, and bus shelters to improve connectivity and safe passage along Center Road in Willoughby, Ohio, Lake County?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Peachum. Trudy, could you please call roll?
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Peaceman,
Yes.
Sheets,
No,
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That has passed, and you can go to the Willoughby Willoughby with good news. The next item is a housekeeping item, and it's going to be our procurement manual.
Yeah, so, Andrea would normally do this, but she, scheduled a vacation before we moved board meeting, so I just thanked it for her. This is a routine item, this is an update to Laketran's procurement manual. I sent an email out to everybody with the track changes document and the manual for approval. Most of the items in here are just sort of standard cleanup items as a result from changes in the state or federal law. We did also include the changes that we thought were appropriate based on the board's desire to purchase legal services outside the standard way we were doing it in the past. So we made those changes, we sent everything over to Brandon, he has reviewed and approved everything. And so this is just sort of a cleanup to those items. This slide details the listing of what we changed in the manual. Nothing really majorly significant, overall, so just a kind of a procedural cleanup item.
And my understanding is you used some of the comments from Bill and we did the presentation earlier in the year, and then Brandon cleaned up whatever was necessary.
That is correct. Andre worked with Brandon in the changing process to make sure that specifically the procurement of legal services and the like was reflected in the way that board had previously done and desired.
Okay. So basically, no changes to that? Is that what you're saying?
Technically, in the past, the procurement manual was in conflict with what the board did, that those changes have been removed, so now that the board and the procurement manual are in alignment.
The way it always had been, even though it wasn't that way then.
Not sure I know what you mean, but they match now.
Yeah.
Now the manual and what the board did the last time they procured legal services are in alignment.
Which is the way they've been doing it for years. Legal search, the way the board was hiring the legal search.
Well, the board had hired legal services in a number of ways in the past, so we're just keeping it.
The last time,
It matched the last time, yes.
so it really hasn't changed the way you've been doing it recently.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Ben?
Yeah, I got a question. I'm not sure how you use the phrase, but, Ben, how do we handle, or how have we handled in the past, what I would call chain purchase orders? And I don't mean that as a derogatory term, but, so we have a supplier, let's use, computer services, for instance. And we authorize anything about $25,000 at the board level, right? But we end up spending $200,000 over the course of the year. Once we authorize $25,000, the authorization stops at that point, and then any further agreement to go forward would have to be reauthorized. Again, I'm not sure how exactly to phrase this, but you know, there are probably some things where it's going to be more than $25,000 over the course of the year. And so, do we authorize each increment of 25,000 or whatever the appropriate number would be? How is that handled? I'm sure. I'm just trying to remember how we've done that.
So, first of all, a project level expense, and so, for example, when you approve the purchase of a bus for, say, like a jog bus for $140,000, if that were to go above $140,000, we would come back to you for a new number. So, like, if we went through the bidding process, like, say, I'm trying to think of an example, like, if for some reason the bus came back and wanted more money than the board authorized, we would say no or come back to your authorization. I think what you're asking is more like in the operating budget, like a good example would be parts from Classic.
Yeah,
And so
okay, that's a good one.
we buy parts from Classic all the time. We do spend over $100,000. The process has always been that when it's included in the operating budget, it's been approved by the board in the operating budget, and those purchases continue to occur. So if they're part of our operations, the board approved the operating budget, we don't come back with individual approvals. If it is a capital item or a one-time use, then we come to you for everything over 25.
So would you treat the approved budget as a do not exceed number with Classic? You know, do we have a line item that says we're gonna spend $50,000 or $75,000 on spare parts? What happens if you get to 75,000? And you still need parts? It's September.
Yeah, technically, when the board approves the budget, they're approving a total not to exceed number, not a line item,
So you can mix and match the line items.
if we needed to, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks. Just trying to remember how the process works.
Yeah, and those would show up, in the reporting every month, but anything that is sort of, the easiest way to think about it, if it is unique, it is always brought to the board for. If it is a recurring expense that we do every year, then it is in the operating budget, and it does not typically come to the board for individually.
Any other questions or comments for Ben on the procurement manual? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve, excuse me, is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-12, approving updates to Laketran federal procurement guidelines and grants manual?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Stanger, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Swanson. Trudy, can you please call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Nunley.
Yes.
Peace,
Yes.
Sheets, Stanger.
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that just passed. I will now turn the meeting over to Ben for the 6-month look ahead.
All right, the first item actually on the list is April, which all we have is the P-test. So in the document in your board packet, I did suggest that the board may want to consider canceling this meeting or the April meeting. The P-test is an annual routine item that usually takes only a couple minutes. We don't really have anything else on the agenda, the stuff in May, we can't really move up due to procurement timelines, so it's up to the board if they'd like to, but there really isn't a whole lot happening in May or in April. In May, we have Geauga Infrastructure Phase 1. This is to add a propane fueling station to the Geauga facility from their loan grant. In May, we have purchase of Valoride buses, significant purchase of Valoride buses just because of the funding and the age of vehicles. So 26 Valoride buses at $5.5 million. We also have expansion Valoride buses. This is, so the first item is Laketran replacements. The second one is Geauga expansions. So as part of the loan grant Geauga received, these are buses to expand their service to provide more service specifically to the manufacturers in the southern section of Geauga. It's actually a pretty exciting project. It should help get some more employees to those facilities. In June, we have federal grant authority, which is a routine item we do every year. We have shelter construction at East Lake Middle School. Our current cost estimate for that is $175,000 for 2 shelters. We have an upgraded gasoline tank at this facility, which replaces our 4,000 gallon tank with a 15,000 gallon tank. So a couple things, it allows us to buy fuel a little bit cheaper per gallon because we accept a full truckload. It also gives us more redundancy that we have an issue. That'll give us some reserve fuel on site, whereas right now we have very limited amount of reserve fuel if there's an issue, just because how much we get through. We still have no meeting scheduled for July. We're being cognizant, we kind of invest the limit. We're not planning to add any more items to June, it's just those 3. Same goes for August, it's just these 3. We don't want to overload or before or after. In August, we have bus inspection contractor scheduled, so this is with the provision that the Valoride bus item passes based on the number of buses ordered. We are required to have an inspector per federal regulations to inspect those buses, which is actually a good thing. It helps us catch small things at the factory we're just catching here. We have a driveway repair at the Geauga Transit Facility, which they received a grant from Ohio or ODOT from. And then we have potentially another park and ride resurfacing. We put it on here just so the board be aware of our thoughts. It's getting time that it needs to be done. We're debating whether or not it should be done at this point or not. We may try to put it off in a couple of years. But we thought we put it on here just in case we decided to move forward with it. In September, we traditionally we do the strategic planning retreat then, so I wanted to put it on here as something we can discuss if we want to continue to move forward with that format. We also have replacement windows at Geauga Transit. In October, we have Geauga Transit rating 2 years. Both of those are also we have grant awards from ODOT. And that is it, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Why can't you move at least one of the, you have May? There was 3 different conversations about buses, I think.
Yeah.
Why couldn't at least one of those be slotted in for April? I mean, worst case scenario, aren't we just ahead of the game by talking about it early?
We could easily move, alliance, I should say easily, but we could, us purchase up today if the board would like. I mean, this is, we can be as flexible as you like.
The only question I would have is that go with your procurement timeline.
It probably wouldn't be a good idea to move the Geauga one because those are tied to a specific grant, but I'd be worried about the timeline on them, looking to it, make sure I'm right.
Yeah, that timeline we don't have yet.
Yeah,
That's the ramp one.
right,
So, oh yeah, and give us the timeline for the fund yet.
right, we're expecting that to be here before May, so I don't think I'd move the Geauga bus purchase. Our bus purchase would be a good move if we wanted to.
In my opinion, I would be in support of that, just because it just seems like a better course of action, but I'm certainly not beholden to it if, if anyone else has any objections on that.
I mean,
Just being silly to not have a meeting. Seems, maybe silly is the wrong word. I'm concerned about not having a meeting, one, because things could come up, and two, because I'd rather have two short meetings than one where we're having a lengthy discussions and about things that go wrong and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. But that's, to me, that's why I put this together, so we can move stuff around if you guys want to, so that's no big deal, we will move this outright purchase item into the April agenda, so the April agenda will have the PTAS and the bus purchase.
Can we add something for July, so we have another meeting in July? I'm just.
I don't want to be a lone wolf, if someone has no objection, say so.
I'm more serious about, Ben, going back to the, fuel tank.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, what's the ROI on that? Can you tell us how much you're gonna save and how long it's gonna take to pay for that?
I don't remember what it is. Keith, you remember what it is?
and we get better prices with the full load.
I'd love to see those numbers.
Sure. We will even pay those to you.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move on to the CEO. Okay. Construction teams have done a pretty good job with the nice weather we had this month, so a lot of the stuff they were planning to do later, especially the back garage area, they've been moving forward with, so all the beams or the ceiling joist is the right term, I'm blocking the right word, the cross. Yes, the roof trusses, there we are, the roof trusses have been installed, they move forward with the decking, so they are doing a good job after we get a little bit ahead of schedule. The demolition is nearly complete in operations. They have moved some windows, they're gonna be cutting holes and walking through in the driver's entrance. The dispatch room and maintenance, they've finished all the concrete floorboards that are done there, so they are moving along well in the construction project overall. Strategic planning call, we did kind of mention this already, so we have a pre-bus build meeting for SES scheduled later this month for the vehicles. The IT strategic plan, HR and ops are wrapping up the process of the first module, the HRS system, the HR module. And the HR module is kind of building block of HRS, so that's the first thing they need to do to get that running. That software will accommodate the flex driver. The flex driver scheduling we've been working on, and so we don't have to buy a separate piece of software to do that, which is really good news. We hosted a hiring event on March 7th, and we have, I believe right now, we have 29 drivers that are gonna be in that class. Maybe there's another one or two before it comes along, because people change their mind, but good result of that class. We've been actively continuing to recruit more mechanic and vehicle services positions. And we just recently, actually, this was the first day for Michelle Corbett as the new budget and finance manager. For customer engagement, we've been working with, brain fart there. We worked with Lake County EMA to talk about the eclipse. They've consistently kind of dialed back their expectations for the eclipse, so it may be a lot to do about nothing. We have, the drivers that weren't on vacation have been prohibited from taking days off. We'll have all hands on deck here. We recently learned, I don't think I ever worked this before, but I do apologize. We were specifically told by the state that they do not want us to shuttle people to Edwards Park. So we're doing a shuttle for the airport, which is pretty small with the outright buses. But other than that, other than traffic, we don't have any other major activities going on our end. We did put some extra porta-johns at the parking garage, just in case people end up there. We thought a little bit of money in porta-johns would be better than what I have, if they weren't there. We launched our annual, student design, art bus, contest, we usually do April 4th. And because of how close it was within 2 weeks, there really weren't any updates to the grant tracker, so it is, pretty much the same as it was when we met last month. That is, my report. Unless you have any questions, I'll turn it over to Matt for where.
Where did they want you to have cost to?
We originally thought they were gonna ask us to take people to Headlands State Park,
I didn't hear them.
and they, I'm sorry, and they came back and said, absolutely not, under no circumstances should you bring any additional meetings to that facility. So, they said they would be very mad at us if we set the bus there, so we backed off that idea.
So I think last time you said they were anticipating like 300,000 extra people in the county, so where's that at now? You said they've been dialing it down.
What is the number now?
They dialed it back, but they did not give us an actual number.
They told us 1.5 in Cleveland.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
they just said lower than what we were saying before. That's literally what they said.
I just kind of saw this fast.
You know, when we can plan for a specific event, it's nice that like we, like, you know, like the cast parade, everybody went to a place. This is like the most frustrating planning process, because you just don't know where people are gonna go, what they're gonna do, what, it's just maddening. That's been very, we've had a lot of internal meetings about it.
So it's 300,000 over there, 299,000.
Like 300. Matt, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So, Battle Ride ridership of, from January of 24 increased by 8%. So that's 1,500 trips. So our early morning service, we saw 691 rides, and the evening service, 142 rides. You know, I think that evening service, you know, is still catching on. It's been growing slowly, but surely.
Man, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Absolutely.
Being kind of a curious guy from time to time, would it be possible for you to break out the morning and evening rides as separate lines that we can track? And instead of putting them only in the local, is there a way for us to include that, sort of separate it out somehow? I don't know how, maybe on a different chart or something, I'm not quite sure.
On the graph?
A graph or a separate graph?
Oh, okay.
Something,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be hard to put it on this graph, but without getting into.
Sorry, for you, for morning, evening historical data.
Yeah, just, I'd like to see how we can,
Yeah, sure.
I think we ought to be able to, we ought to track, since we're making a pretty good investment in increasing that service, we ought to be able to see how well we're doing with it. Yeah, when we get to that point, same with the, same day. Maybe all that becomes one chart of some kind.
Absolutely.
What I'll call extra services.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So local rail ridership saw a 12% increase over 23. And park and ride is actually at 25% over January of 23. And it's actually growing even more, February, we're gonna see even more growth in that, so. I think with the federal building saying, hey, no more working at home, people are going back. So I don't know if we're ever gonna get back up to where we were, but it's growing, so it's a good thing. And denials continue to be low. So hovering around 150 a week. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Matt. Is there any old business in the room? Seeing none. New business, I was gonna bring out the April meeting. It sounds like we are good leaving the meeting on the books for April. Got anything? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mr. Quantin, seconded by Snackamy. Sure, you can just call the roll.
Acting,
Yes.
Nunley.
Yes.
Peasmo,
Yes.
Sheets,
Maybe.
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned at 5:50 today.